Hello there, all you cool cats and kittens. I hope you're doing wonderful.
Yeah, anyone that can do high pressure sales, they're gonna have the capacity to self-staging, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
I was talking about logo design, which specifically was talking about, but I was talking about the branding aspect of things, because here's the thing. A lot of us created our brand, which means we created our logo, we created our website, we created that vision before we launched our business. We didn't have a clue what our brand was before we launched our business.
And one of the things we might then start talking about, think about it, is how do you all become anti-fragile, right? How do you all sort of take advantage of these changes and improve, right? So that the opportunities are there.
Just for a moment about this idea of, if you want to look for top producing realtors, then then go all in and don't worry about speaking to those realtors that just began, and don't even, for that marketing message, worry about talking to homeowners. Like, go all in with who you really want to work with without apology. So yeah.
Yes, stop apologizing. Sorry if I'm going out of vision here. I have to adjust myself. Hey everybody, Shell Brodnax here with an episode of Stager Talk. I'm so excited today, but I need to check my audio and all my technology. So first, anybody that's joining us, if you could type in that chat box that one, you can see us, and two, that you can hear me, and also let us know what state you're in. And let me just do some introductions. So first, we have the gorgeous, beautiful, and talented Liz Connolly. Liz, welcome.
Thanks, Shell. Glad to be here.
And then we have her beautiful, beautiful offspring, Courtney Schomburg. And Courtney, you also know her as the RISA chairperson of the board of directors. Welcome, Court.
Thanks, Shell.
And then we also have this amazing business broker, Steve Denny, who is going to blow your socks off and make your head explode with some great information. Aren't you, Steve?
I certainly am, Shell. Thanks for that wonderful introduction.
So as you all can tell, we like to have a little fun here at Stager Talk. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of sit here and chat. We've got some questions that I know that everybody wants answered. And then as we're going, if you have a question, go ahead and pop it down. Do we have a Q&A, Joanna? I'm looking down here. I don't think we have a Q&A on this one. So just go ahead and throw it in the chat box, and we will try to manage that as well and get your question in. At the very end, we'll also open up for some Q&A in case we missed anything. All right, are you guys ready to get going? All right, so we're going to talk about selling a staging business. So I am so excited about this because we were just talking, and I'll just brief you a minute beforehand about how excited I am that the staging industry has really matured. I've been in the industry 19 years as of this month. It's my 19-year anniversary. And we absolutely have matured. So we are just now in the last few years getting people to the point in their businesses where they're thinking about selling. And when they're thinking about selling, they want to, do we have somebody in the background? Do we have everybody muted, Joanna? I'm thinking I'm hearing people in my ear. Thank you. So it's one of those things that people, most stagers, when they decide to sell their business, they just had a fire sale and they just sold their inventory, and they're not putting any value on the 15 years of hard work that got them where they were. And one of those reasons, because they just did not know what to do. So we're going to kind of uncover some of these mysteries today, because this is a really great case study, because Courtney and Liz went into business together. So Liz, you want to tell us a little bit about how long you were in business, but let's start with first, why did you decide to get into business together?
That's a long story, but I'm going to condense it today. Okay. So we started in 2007. I turned 50 in December of 2006, and Courtney graduated from college in December. And at that point, I was tired of working for somebody else. And I knew that Courtney would probably have trouble working for anybody else. So I thought that we should start a company. The reason we started a staging business is I had been working in the home building industry for about 10 years. And when I got into the business, homes were just selling like hotcakes. Then in late 05, 06, that came to a screeching halt. And we were sitting with 63 inventory homes, those are homes already built and ready for sale. And as marketing director, the builder saying, Liz, how are we going to get these sold? So we heard every Sunday as people would come through the displays, the salespeople would say, you know, what are you looking for? They said, we're here to look at the decorating. So we said, maybe we should decorate those 63 homes. And that was the first time I was introduced to home staging. That was in 2006. At that time, there were only about 2 companies in our market that were doing any type of home staging. And I called a couple of them, had them begin staging some of our properties, looked at the results we were getting and the amount we were paying, and thought, I think that there's an opportunity here. So Courtney and I started the business January of 2007 with $5,000, my husband's blessing and a prayer, and the rest was history.
That is awesome. So all in all, you were in business for about how long before you decided to sell?
We decided to sell during our 12th year. We sold it just as we got into our 13th year in business.
That's awesome. And that's because it's a quick decision. You guys were really sure.
We were.
You really wanted to do that. That's awesome. So let me ask you, because I mean, I think I probably already know the answer to this, because if you had a short turn once you decide to sell, that means you did a lot of work. You didn't just decide to sell and say, oh, now what do we need to do? So when you first started the business, let me ask you this. When you first started, did you start it with in mind and start building your systems from day one for the hope that one day you would sell it? Or did that come after a few years of being in the business, Courtney?
I wish we would have started the business that way. We did not, of course, but we were very organized. Liz has amazing systems and documented everything. So when it did come time to sell, we had everything we needed already ready and packaged up because of her detail-oriented abilities. So we were ready to go. But if we definitely didn't even think about that when we started.
Well, that's awesome that you got it there. So what was the ultimate decision that you two came together, said, you know what, we're ready, we're done?
I would say when my husband retired in May of 2018, you know, we'd spent our lives working, and we wanted to enjoy life and travel. And so that was the impetus on my end. And then Courtney had kind of another reason, and it all came together. I'll let her tell you her story.
Well, she's not talking about the part where we all did dream boards for our family, or vision boards. And we all lived in Missouri, obviously, but all of us had on our dream board that we wanted to live at the beach. So I was like, what are we doing here in the middle of the country? And I wanted to move my daughter Olive before she got any older, so it'd be an easier transition for her. So we decided to hop on it then and start the process.
That's awesome. And so now you've landed in Florida.
Now we're here.
Sold the business. And now you guys, everybody that's listening and everybody that's going to be listening to this eventually, you are going to get a lot of great wisdom, because one of those things, Courtney just nailed it, is that they wish they would have started thinking about these systems and implementing them from the get-go. So it's super important if you're new to the industry. I mean, it's never too late to get them done. You need to get it done if you want to sell it. But and the sooner you can do some of the things, the better. So what processes, Liz, this question's for you, what processes and procedures did you have in place that made your business attractive to buyers?
I'm going to look at my notes on this so I don't miss anything, because in selling the business and in the book that we're writing with Steve, there are 2 phases to selling your business. The first is to have all these processes and systems in place. And like Shell said, that should happen from the get-go, or at least a couple of years before you think about selling the business. So the systems that we had in place that Steve told us added the most value to our business were these. The first is a comprehensive business plan. And we did have a business plan from the get-go to see, you know, where we were going to go. We hadn't taken it all the way through selling the business. We kind of added to, updated, and revised it as the 12 years went on. So a comprehensive business plan is something that a buyer is going to want to see. The other system you need to have in place is a financial plan. What I see on Facebook all the time is new stagers getting into the business, and then they're asking, okay, I've got 2 houses of furniture out right now, and I've got more jobs coming in, and what should I do? Where am I going to get the furniture? girls, you need to plan that, girls and boys, before you get into the business. You need to look at how much revenue do you need to earn, and how much furniture and accessories and resources is it going to take to earn that revenue. And I think that's a big, big piece that a lot of stagers don't think about when they get into the business. So not only a financial plan for financing the business, because you're not going to be profitable the first several months, you're going to have to put money in and build that infrastructure. And also an accounting system and plan for tracking your business and your finances and things. So then the third thing, an inventory control system, so you know what you have. And when we started in the business, we had never even heard of RISA. Well, Courtney and I just kind of jumped right in. We didn't know that all these wonderful resources were out there. And when we learned that those resources were there, we jumped on it and took all the education. But now there are wonderful inventory control systems out there, because not only do they track your inventory, but the important thing about that system is to be able to amortize your inventory over the years for tax and accounting purposes. That's very, very important. So the sooner you have an inventory control system, the better. And then when you go to sell your business, that buyer is going to want to look at your inventory system and see what they're buying. But as Shell mentioned earlier, it's not just purchasing the inventory. That's a very, very small part of selling your business. That furniture can go for 15 cents on the dollar. What you want to be working toward is what they call personal goodwill. And Steve's going to expand on that later. That is the whole infrastructure of your business, your clients, your website, and things. The fourth is having a team of employees who will stay on with the new owner. Steve will expand on this next one during his session, but a buyer does not want to buy a business that doesn't have any employees in place. Many staging businesses only have maybe a husband and wife team, and they don't have other people involved in the business. A new owner generally wants to have somebody on that team that can continue to run that business at the level it's currently running and continue to grow the business, at least for a period of time once they purchase the business. And then finally, and this is something that really adds value to your business, is having a detailed employee manual and a detailed operations manual. And this is your company Bible. When a buyer comes in, they can look at this notebook and they can run your business from there. It'll have your job descriptions, how your business is run, every detail about your business. We had all that in place just by the grace of God. We didn't know that we needed that to sell a business, but we had always done the systems and procedures. So those are the top 5 things that you need to have in place prior to even considering selling your business and reaching out to market your business.
Yep, I love it. We also have those things at RISA, the employee manual and the operations manual, and it is one of my least favorite things to work on. I'm not going to lie, but it's so necessary, because even for us, when you between staff, you all might make a decision on something and you implement something, but it's not something you do all the time, and then you can't remember it and you need something to reflect back to. Yeah. So they're definitely very helpful. And I can see how if you sold the business, it would be incredibly helpful to give a new owner just the blueprints, just step by step of everything that they need. So Courtney, I think you're probably like myself and a lot of people that probably thought first, maybe you just want to try to sell the business on your own. So did you try to do that first and then decided to get a broker? Tell me about that. How did all that come to play?
Yeah, originally we had no idea that we could get a broker. We didn't know there was such a thing as a business broker. So we did think that we were going to sell it ourselves, and we had potential people who we thought might want to buy it, but we learned about Steve and his company and jumped on it, because having a professional like that, like Steve, who can hold our hand and guide us through the whole process, was invaluable. I keep referring to it as like you're staging your business, basically. So you want your business to be in the best light possible. We're used to staging these houses, but This time, look at your business and you're thinking about all these things that you would point out and want to fix in a business. And Steve is the one that helps you point it out. He's like the business stager. And finding him was a godsend because Liz and I had no idea what we were doing.
So
it really worked.
With originally, did you seek advice from any other type of professionals? Like what's the first thing somebody's likely to do? Are they likely to go to their attorney or a CPA first before they start thinking of a broker? And then what are the pros and cons of that? Because I'd imagine in my viewpoint, it's like I would want to go to a broker first because that's their profession. A CPA that's not their profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, we did go to a CPA first. We thought that was the logical first step. And we went to our CPA and they did a business valuation for us. And we were not happy with the numbers that came back. And we were like, this can't be right. There has to be something missing here. And that's when we started looking for someone like Steve to put the pieces together and really look at the business itself, not just the assets, but the actual business, and put a plan together for sale. But yeah, don't go to someone like an attorney or a CPA. They don't really dive in like a business broker does.
Yeah. So that brings us to Steve. The floor is yours, my friend. So what does it look like if a stager was going to come to you and say, hey, I've got a business. What do I do? What does that look like? What's that conversation first?
So when they come to us, we sit down and have a pretty detailed conversation about what the process is all about, what's necessary to bring the business to marketplace, all the work that the seller is going to have to put involved in the process. And, we just cover every aspect of it from that standpoint to the best of our knowledge at that time. Liz and Courtney had an unusual situation. Their transaction happened during a government shutdown, and we had a couple of complicating factors involved, but all in all, we got through it. And that's, it begins with that initial meeting where you sit down and go over the full process. And one of the things we say to all of our clients is, if you're getting ready to sell your business and you don't have a plan for the day after you sell, the first thing you need to do is go back and get that plan together. So Liz and Courtney came, they had their vision. They knew exactly where they wanted to go and what life looked like for them afterwards. And frankly, that's a key component, because if you don't have that in play, you are very quickly going to become bored and then a little bit sorry. And I have seen people become, very unhappy after having sold their business when they didn't have that plan. So that's why we require that up front. The other two comments I want to make is, Liz is right on the money. She had all these ingredients in play. I told her at the time, and I still think over the course of all the clients we've represented in the last 5 years, they were the most prepared. They were very well organized. They had all their ducks in a row. Everything was in great shape. And, I told her at the time, and I believe to this day, they were still, the most organized, prepped client in play. And I got to have a special call out to Courtney's husband, John, as well, because John built some of those systems for them that really made a big difference in terms of, getting them to the headline price that we thought their business was capable of achieving. So they were very, very well prepared, and they had a great team in place that was aligned with what their vision was of the future.
Awesome. So about how long does it take average to sell? Let's just use staging business because we're talking to stagers. On average, what would you think how long it could possibly take to sell a staging business?
So the International Business Brokerage Association keeps track of all this pretty readily, and it has pretty well stayed around 12 months for the last several years. And when you're talking about companies of less than $5 million, okay? So generally a larger company can move faster, and depending upon what particular industry you're in, some industries are in very high demand and move very, very quickly. But generally speaking, a company that's going to sell for less than $5 million, the process is going to take about a year.
So is that a year from, start marketing to contract signed?
No, that's a year from first meeting.
Offer.
Sit down and understand, because,
Gotcha.
We rarely have clients that have ever been through this before. And frankly, it takes about 1 to 3 months, depending upon the condition of the business and the client's ability to gather information. it takes, somewhere between 30 and 90 days to get the business onto the market, if you will.
And then if somebody's interested, now obviously there's probably a lot of variables if somebody's interested in wanting to make an offer, so the negotiations can be short. If everybody's in agreement right away, it's just a done deal, and that could probably drag out for a few months while you're negotiating, I would imagine.
Very true. We always start with a business valuation up front. So we establish a range. There's no one key number that a business is worth, right? So every business sits on a range someplace, and we establish what that range is with the seller up front. And frankly, we get pretty firm in that range. So, the negotiation side is really not the hard part. The hard part is really the diligence piece of, when you sell a piece of real estate, they'll do a title search. When you sell a business, basically the buyers are searching through all the business records, and they're really wanting to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. And if there are some deficiencies, that they can identify those before they take ownership of the business.
Excellent. Now, Courtney and Liz spoke about employees and how it's important to be able to have some employees that are willing to stay behind. They're the boots on the ground. They're the ones that are making the cogs all work together. So is this something when somebody decides to sell, how much employee involvement is there in the process of the sale? Should they know about it? Is there a certain time where you're going to want to let everybody know? And is it beneficial? I would imagine it would be beneficial that if you have a key person already in place, to try to have a succession plan if you're thinking about this. And if you've got somebody that's there, try to sell the business to somebody that's already working in the business. I would imagine that would be really advantageous.
Yeah, great question, Shell. So first and foremost, the best time to tell your employees that your business is for sale is the day after you sell it. Okay, so keep in mind that most employees will never leave the company unless the buyer comes in and mistreats them in some way, changes their job responsibility, changes their compensation. So the best time to tell employees that the business is for sale is the day after you sell it. And the reason is because nothing good can happen beforehand if you do. Very often people get scared, they get worried that they're going to lose their job, and then they'll end up leaving you and create more trouble for you. So generally speaking, that's the case. Now in Liz and Courtney's situation, they had Liz, Courtney, and John, some family members that were involved in the business, and they ended up selling to a key employee of the business. So there were, several members of their team that were engaged in the process, and there was a pretty good job of keeping that confidential until the end. But in general terms, you don't want to share that with your employees. Now, the bigger problem is if the owner of the business is the key employee, if everything that happens in the business revolves around the owner and there's not good segregation of duties and there's not good responsibilities and job descriptions and employee manuals, if you don't have a good setup and structure and process in your business, then it becomes much more difficult to sell.
Yeah, I would imagine that infrastructure is really important.
Makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. So let me ask just a kind of a random question. Courtney, did you guys have a big warehouse and moving trucks?
We did. We had a very large warehouse and office space that we were leasing. So that was kind of part of the agreement too, that they could continue leasing the space. And we had a unique situation with our trucks. We did not own them, but we had it stored at our warehouse. And that relationship was very important to the new owner as well, so they could keep everything consistent. And one of the things the new owner wanted from us is for Liz to stay for a certain amount of time, and then for me and John to also stay for a certain amount of time, because she wanted to make sure that she knew everything there was to know before we left. So I think when you're selling as well, even if you are the only person in the business, you don't have employees yet, if you can give the time to the new owner to stay around and help with the transition, that's a huge, huge benefit to them, because it'll help them learn everything they need to know before they're out on their own.
Yeah, give them a lot more confidence too.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
Michelle, I'd like to expand on that a bit. The way my contract was written with the buyer, I agreed to be available for 30 days, not on site. I never went back to the office really after I sold the business. I was just there if she needed me. And then I negotiated, and you can negotiate anything in your sales agreement. I negotiated for John to stay on for 1 year from the date of closing and work remotely from Florida. And Courtney stayed on for, I think, 3 months, I think.
I think 6 months.
6 months.
6 months,
Okay. Yeah. And so that worked very well for everybody. The buyer was able to have like just a full team transition. And then as it turned out, her husband had been with Boeing for many, many years. And he decided to leave Boeing and take over the operations that my son-in-law was doing. So now they are continuing the family business.
Oh, that's so awesome. So I love it when it works out well, but sometimes you run into a little bit of challenges or obstacles along the way. What type of challenges did you face during this entire process, Liz?
I'd say one of the biggest was the confidentiality. And one of our employees did end up buying the business, and just to back up a little bit, she was not the person that we thought would buy the business. When we reached out to Steve, we hadn't even really considered that she might be the one to buy the business. We really, really trusted her all along, and we told her what we were doing. And then they decided to throw their hat in the ring. But Steve did proceed to market the business, and we did have other interested buyers. So he did work the process with the other buyers. But the biggest thing was confidentiality. Our logistics manager got wind of it, and one of our other guys, he did miscellaneous stuff in the office. Anyway, they tend to overhear some conversations. And then, like Steve said, they get very, very nervous about their positions. They have families to feed, and as much as you try to reassure them that they're a valuable part of the company and they're going to be kept on, that was a little difficult. Other than that, like Steve said, the government shutdown, you're going to need verified tax returns, tax transcripts that come from the IRS, and you can't download them online. You have to get them sent from the IRS. And we have such difficulty getting those transcripts. It delayed the closing of our business by 3 months because the SBA will only fund a loan when they have 3 years of audited transcripts from the IRS. So those were the only two challenges we really encountered.
I would say the emotional roller coaster of it all is a challenge sometimes.
I bet that has to be I know what it's like to bring on new people and work with new people and boards after something that you build. It's like it takes a little piece of your soul every time you let a piece go and you give a responsibility to someone else. It literally just deteriorates your heart. Was it the same thing for you?
Yes, it's definitely very tough, and some days are great, other days are very emotional, but you have Steve there. We had Steve there to hold our hand through it whenever we were freaking out about different things. So it was nice to have that.
Yeah. So let's back up for a second. So a while back, we talked about the CPA when you first went in to get a valuation, and that was really low and you weren't happy with it. And then you worked with Steve and it was significantly different. So were you surprised that it was I think you said it was more than double.
Mm-hmm.
Were you surprised at that?
No, we weren't surprised. We knew the CPA had to be low, and he wasn't a business broker. He didn't take into account the personal goodwill. And Steve, do you want to just give a little bit of info on personal goodwill? That was a term that we had never heard of, and it was such a major factor in us achieving the price we did in the sale of our business.
So CPAs typically are looking at, your operating reports, right? Your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow statements, and they are always measuring what's considered book value, which is basically the sum of what you own minus what you owe, right? So CPAs commonly come at a business valuation with this book value mindset, if you will. And it's typically on the very low end of the scale that very rarely has any application in a business sale process. What Liz is referring to is personal goodwill. So your business is worth the sum total of what you own minus what you owe, plus the processes and systems, inventory, and cash flow generation capability of your business, right? And inventory is a tangible asset that is valued in the sale process, but the quality of your customers, the quality of your systems, and the quality of your cash flow are intangibles. And that intangible all rolls up into this personal goodwill factor. And that is what makes, the big difference in valuation between one company and another. So in essence, you could have $2 million staging companies that are in the same town that are doing basically the same level of revenue. And if one is basically a seat of the pants operation that, has no processes, no systems, but they're pretty good salespeople and they're really good hustlers, and they go out and get the job done, sometimes by hook or crook or whatever, right? That business is going to be valued at a much lower level than a business like Liz's that had great people, great processes. Everything was very well organized. The business operated without her. She could go on vacation with her family and the business would still run because everybody knew what they were doing. So, a business like that would have a much higher level of goodwill in it and a much higher value, even though the revenues of the business look to be identical.
That's so good to know. So what are some of the, Steve, this question's for you. What are some of the most frequently asked questions from buyers to sellers?
Well, the number one asked question is, why are you for sale? If your business is so great, why are you for sale? So we have a list of the top 5 most frequently asked questions. And one of the things we do with our clients is review that list up front. The way we do that is we ask our clients to basically write out their answers first off. And then we never are lying. Okay. So I want to be very clear about this. We are never giving anybody untrue facts. We're only giving people true facts, but we do help coach sellers to provide answers in a light that puts their business at the best advantage, if you will. So again, we never want to hide defects, but we always want to highlight the best things about the business. Okay. And it is about educating the seller so that they can answer these questions in such a way that doesn't give a buyer an advantage. Because if the buyer perceives that you need to sell for a particular reason, they're going to be very hard negotiators, right? They're going to try and get you down because they know your need to sell is higher than their need to buy, right? So they smell opportunity, if you will. So it is important that you basically give the right answers. It can make the difference between getting a deal done and not getting a deal done.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you give other stagers interested in selling their business?
Most importantly, work on your business to a point where you have these 5 ingredients that Liz talked about. You definitely got to have a comprehensive business plan. The buyer, if the buyer is using financing, they will be required to create a business plan. And if they can take what you already have and then add their vision to it, it puts them in a much better situation to be able to get the deal done. You got to have a financial plan as well. And if you have a financial plan, you should basically factor in continuous improvement in that as well. So require that your business gets a little bit better over time. And what you're doing is stair-stepping the value of your business up over time as well. The inventory and assets, Liz had among the best system that I had ever seen. They had everything visual. They actually had pictures of all of their inventory and so forth. And they had this phenomenal system that actually tracked not only the specifics of their inventory, but also the wear and tear on their inventory as well, the images. So they just had taken everything to the next level in that regard. And having good systems, processes where you have really good information on your assets and your inventory in the staging business is key. It's a real key asset to have. They had great people. that knew exactly what was required of them. They knew what their job was. They did it without a lot of involvement from the managers, and that helped as well. And then, they had all of the operations manuals and everything in place. So, they had been in a position where no surprises really attacked their business. One other key thing that Liz didn't mention that was very key in her business, and is a common trait among all businesses that get sold at the high end of the value range, is Liz had a very diverse customer base as well. So not only did she do a great job of working with the local real estate agents, and she was, constantly at the top of the market in terms of agents coming to her, but she also had builders and developers and a whole network of other people that were always feeding her leads. So her revenue base was diverse. It wasn't dependent on one real estate agency or, one set of high producing real estate agents. She had a broad base of clients that were coming in that gave her a lot of stability, even when the market was going up and down.
Excellent. So when you're selling, Steve, do you include like financial forecasting?
So we do a good look backwards in terms of financials, and financial forecasting, the buyer always has to do that. So we give them basically the ingredients that enables them to do that financial forecasting. We don't do it for them because the lending laws don't allow us to, but we give them all the ammunition and we'll walk them through that process so that they can do the appropriate forecasting moving forward.
So how does that work with a business so let's say you've got Liz and Courtney, their business is great, it's booming, you've got all your ducks in a row. However, it is still relationship based. So someone that's new that comes in, they could blow it up in 90 days. How does that affect the sale of a business or the value of one?
I really think, Shell, the interesting thing about that is if the business owner truly holds all of those relationships themselves, that is a deficit. That is something that we got to clean up and try and fix in order to get maximum value for the business. And that can be done. That's not something that should hold you back in that regard. But most of the time, those relationships are across the organization. So, the vast majority of the time, salespeople always think that if they leave, the business leaves with them, and it doesn't happen very often, right? Same thing happens with business owners. So one of the things that Liz talked about was the transition period. We require of all of our clients that they work with the buyer for at least 30 days following the sale. And the reason is their first job is to introduce the new owner to all of their clients. That's their first and most important job. And what happens is then the customer is going to be a little wary, because the customer doesn't like change any more than the employees like change. And if the seller is there with the buyer to say, hey, I've investigated this person, I'm confident that they are going to, uphold the legacy that we've built in this company and are going to do a nice job for you. If they've got the customer's got the seller's endorsement, the customer will be inclined to give the buyer the benefit of the doubt. And that gets them through any initial hiccups that take place. And so in those situations, the seller ends up being pretty happy with the transaction, because all of the legacy of service that the seller built stays, right? The customers get honored, and then the buyer has basically the backup resource from the seller, like Liz and Courtney and John, that enables them to get through any of these little hiccups that occur during a transition. And a transition is a time of change. So little things will occur. And, when that happens, then the buyer also has some confidence that they're not in it by themselves. They're the owner, and whatever they say goes, but they're not in it by themselves. So what you end up at the end of the day is you got a buyer that's pretty happy with the transaction, a customer that views the transaction as relatively neutral, and a seller that's very happy with the transaction. So in that situation, everybody can walk away happy and never have to look over their shoulder and worry about, is somebody going to come after them because of, some crazy thing.
Yeah, excellent. I love all this. You guys have done a really great job with this. So you should write a book.
We are. It's been in the works for a while, and it would have been done, but I have so much fun playing here in Florida. and it's hard to keep me focused in at my desk. So Steve and I and Courtney, we are just about ready to go to the editor on March 15th. And we hope to have it published by the end of May, June 1st. So yeah, we've been working on that diligently. And the title is From Stage to Sold, Building a $1 Million Home Staging Business and Selling It for Maximum Profit. And what the book is going to include, it's kind of two-part process. The first part is those 5 systems that I talked about earlier and that Steve expanded on. And if you don't already have those in place or beefed up, the step-by-step on how to do it and what that should look like. And then the balance of the book walks you through the entire process, what to expect, what documents to have ready to prepare. And it should just enable you as a business owner to navigate the process. So the book, along with working with a business broker like Steve, are 2 keys to selling your business for the highest profit.
Excellent. I love it. And I know that you'll be working on a class. Yes.
Yeah, we're working on a CE class for Risa right now, and excited about that.
I'm so excited about it. I've been like, are we going to get the class? Is she going to do the class? When's the class coming? So now that I know you have a book, Gina said, well, they've been writing a book. I said, I didn't know they were writing the book too. So you guys are super busy. I'm super excited about all this. I can't wait for the CE class to be done. I think it's going to be really beneficial. I really want to encourage you all to submit to speak at RisaCon. We are going to be having a RisaCon this year. We just made some decisions last night. So everybody that's listening, stay tuned for that information.
Wow,
but in the meantime, the class is not ready yet. The book's not quite ready yet. But in the meantime, Court, where can stagers find out more about what y'all are doing?
Sure. Liz and I started a private Facebook group that's confidential. And if you friend Liz or I on Facebook and message us, we can invite you to the group. And in that group, we post updates about the book, where it's at, and tips and tricks. And Liz does a few webinars. And Steve is on there too, if you want to ask him questions. Steve also offers all of our RISA members a value builder assessment. Is that correct, Steve?
Absolutely is, yes.
Okay. So why don't you talk about that, Steve? Because I think this is a huge benefit to RISA members, because it's only offered to RISA members right now, and it's huge.
So as I said before, when we start every engagement, we start with a valuation, and the valuation takes 2 forms. First and foremost, we gather all the financial data and we do a financial valuation. And the financial valuation is the cornerstone of the valuation. But it's all these systems and processes that we talked about as well that are the other 3 corners of the process. And the value builder process is a way that our clients can answer. Basically, it's a 47 question multiple choice questionnaire, and then we put all that into our system, and the algorithm kicks out a valuation for them, not a financial valuation, but it shows them where they stand on all these 8 dimensions of value. And what it does is highlights for us and the seller areas of weakness and areas of strength. And when there are areas of weakness, it gives us an opportunity to go and bolster those and try and fix those as much as we possibly can. And obviously in areas of strength, we want to call those out and lean on those as we're marketing the business.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's open it up. We've got, Felicia has put now 5 actions to take now if you want to sell your staging business in the future. This is a blog article by Liz. We've posted a link to that. Liz, y'all are also going to do a professional development webinar for us June 24th. So Joanna or Felicia, if we have the link to register for that created already, go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. Otherwise, everybody can just be on the lookout, because we're going to be marketing that if we're not already. So that'll be having some great information as well. We'll open it up to any questions. So in the meantime, if you have a question, throw it in the chat box and we will get to that. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, is there anything that I've missed or anything else that anybody wants to add? We got through it. We were efficient today, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
We hit all the points. There's a question for you, Liz. This is for you. When you sold the business, had a stranger come in and had the money, but you didn't really care for them and you knew they were going to murder it as soon as you left, would you have sold? Would you just have done it, or would you have wanted it to go to somebody who was really going to nurture it the way that you were going to?
That is a good question. And a lot of emotion does come into the selling process. That's for sure. Your company it's your baby. And when we sold it, it was like we put our baby up for adoption. In the situation we were in, I would not have. However, if you're a seller and there isn't a high demand for your business and you need the money, it's a personal decision. It worked out great for us that one of our employees bought it. And I wanted to, while speaking of that, the day we sold, right after we got done at the closing table, before we popped the champagne cork, I got on the phone with all of our key clients, one after another. Courtney and I tried to call them all simultaneously, let them know that the business had been sold, let them introduce them by phone to the new owner, set up meetings where I could go along with the new owner and introduce her to these clients. That was a big part of it. Now, since one of our employees bought it, many of our clients already knew her. So that was easier. But I do encourage, when you sell your business, be prepared to, pass that torch and keep that relationship going, because that's really a big part of the continued success of the business.
Yeah, I would agree with that. How is it now, looking back, hindsight? Obviously, you've relocated. I see all your photos online, so I know y'all are happy and tan and on the beach, and Olive's happy. Any regrets?
No regrets at all.
Not a one.
Either of us.
Not a one.
It is kind of like Liz says, it's kind of like you're letting your kid go to college or adoption, and you kind of just have to let go. And that was really hard for me for a while, because, it being our baby that we, nurtured and took care of for 13 years, and then letting somebody else have it was very tough at first. But you just had to keep your eye on the prize and just keep going back to the reason you sold it, which is why it's really important for Steve to know that you have a plan, so that you're not constantly focused on what's going on in the old business. But I will say that it's definitely an emotional time. It's tough, but just keep, you got to keep looking forward and living your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, I got a question for you. What's the multiplier used based on the gross and the net revenue, and how many years are looked at to go back with a business?
So ideally, we like to go back 5 years. And that really does show a good trend. And the multiplier varies depending upon all of the things we talked about, the systems and processes and the cash flows of the business, right? So typically the staging companies are not going to sell for a multiple of revenue. They're going to sell for a multiple of cash flow, free cash flow available to the seller. So you will see internet companies and technology companies and things like that. You'll hear them on CNBC or read about them in the paper and so forth, selling for multiples of revenue. But staging companies are traditionally going to sell for what would be considered a multiple of the free cash flow.
Excellent. And do you recommend that staging businesses have operating costs for 6 months, 9 months, just tucked away in the bank in the savings, untouched?
I recommend that staging companies get very involved with their accountant and really know their numbers, right? So it depends upon, I think, there are, depending upon who you listen to, right? There are various rules of thumb that you would use. I would say it depends a lot on your market, whether your market's growing rapidly or slowly. The big thing about staging companies is you have to pay really close attention to your working capital, the amount of capital that's at work in your business, inventory, cash, your billing cycle, your receivable cycle, et cetera, right? and the profits of your business. So make sure, a buyer writes 2 checks. Okay. Every buyer writes 2 checks. They're going to write you a check for buying the business, the value of your business, and then they're going to have to write a check for working capital to keep the business open and running. Right. So make sure you always keep those 2 dynamics in your business, particularly in the staging business, in good levels of control. Don't let one predominate what's going on in your particular company.
So when somebody's working with you, you're a broker, so you're working with the seller, and then do you also market to find the buyer? So does the buyer have their own representative?
So occasionally they do. We always ask them to have their own attorneys. And we ask them to do that specifically because we want to put the impetus on the buyer to have most of the legal fees in the transaction. So the seller is basically reviewing documents, not creating documents. That makes for a big difference in fees.
Oh, smart.
Okay. So yeah, we're obviously working on the seller's behalf. Listen, I want to speak to one other thing, which I think was key. And you and Liz, you had a great question for Liz about the seller, right? And so 2 things I want to make sure everybody appreciates. One is selling your business is not like selling your house. So you're not going to have buyers trapsing through your business, seeing what's going on, right? These are confidential listings, and typically, your employees, your customers, and your suppliers are not going to be aware of what's going on. And a good broker is never going to bring buyers to your business, over and over again to look things over, right? You just don't want that to happen. The second thing is you really do want to pay attention to that fit. Okay. So most sellers, I would say, the vast majority of sellers we work with are really attuned to who buys it. They want to make sure it's a good fit. Right. And I think Liz's answer, I know it came from her heart, but I think she was being very serious as well, because the money's one thing, but at the end of the day, it is something that you've put a lot of, time and effort and sweat and tears into, and you want to make sure that the legacy of your business is good. So at the end of the day, I mean, we sell businesses all the time, and it never ceases to amaze me how sellers will pick the buyer, and they won't necessarily settle for the highest price. I've seen sellers take significantly less for their business because they felt like the buyer was the right person that was supposed to have that business. And that's a key thing. So that legacy thing is obviously, really important most of the time.
Yeah, I get that. Same thing happens with horse sales, by the way.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah,
I'll
horses.
bet.
If you find that right buyer, you're like, all right, no, I'll come down a little bit on this. Steve, do you work with stagers who want to kind of merge companies together? Do you work
Absolutely.
on anything like that? How does that work?
Yeah. So the mechanics of the process are very, very similar. So really what we do as a broker is where we earn our money is in the process, managing the process, right? And the mechanics of people that have got a buy-sell agreement, or they'll say, hey, I've worked with Courtney. I'd love to sell my business to Courtney, but we don't know how to go about getting it all done. We had that same situation in Liz's perspective. So, one of her employees put her hand up and said, hey, we'd be really interested in this. And we did not aggressively go after them at all, like we did many others, right? And we had to really help them through the whole process, help them identify who are they going to need on their team, what attorney they're going to need to work with, right? How they're going to get the money together, how they're going to do that. We introduced them to a whole series of lenders, and they selected a lender, and we walked them through that whole process of getting that done. So that kind of quarterbacking the whole process is really what me and my company do every day.
Love it. Love it. All right. Any last words from anybody? There's been some really great information. For everybody who's on the webinar, look out for an email with the replay of this particular webinar and an invitation coming up to the upcoming professional development webinar with Liz, Courtney, and Steve. It's going to be on June 24th, I believe. I've lost my notes. June 24th, that's when it is. Okay, a couple more questions. What's a typical brokerage fee?
So typical brokerage fee for a company that sells for $1 million or less is going to be typically around 10% of the net proceeds.
Awesome. money well spent to not make major mistakes. It's one of those things that, you go out on your own. So many professionals, it's like DIY staging. Somebody will go and say, oh, let me do it myself. And then they put, a wingback chair with a broke down ficus tree from Michael's in the corner next to the fireplace. And then they spend the money on that. And then you call a real professional stager to come in and fix it for you. Same things, in your house, try to repair something and you do more damage. Like I might have done a few times, then you have to pay somebody else to come in and clean it up for you. Same thing with the business. It's just so you don't know what you don't know. So it's so smart to be able to get with a broker. Steve, how can everybody reach you?
So the quickest way would be through the Facebook private group. So I would encourage everybody to go to that, message Liz and Courtney. I'm a member of that group as well.
Excellent.
And and I can tell you, Liz and Courtney are in Facebook much more than I am. So I will apologize up front if it takes me a little longer to respond. I guarantee you, Liz or Courtney will be pinging me and making sure that I'm on it. So
yeah, for sure. So if you're not friends with Liz Connolly and Courtney Schomburg already, please friend them on Facebook and then DM them to let them know that you want to join the private Facebook group. And I'm sure you'll be able to post your questions and they will be there to answer them. This has been such a pleasure with everybody.
Shell, one other quick thing. I just wanted to say that, we've done this for Liz and Courtney, that they've been such a blessing in my life. This value builder assessment, typically we sell that for $500, but we're giving that to RISA members. So we're happy to do it complimentary. And not only do we give you the report, but we do a one-on-one Zoom call with you to explain the report to make sure that you understand everything in it as well.
Excellent. Well, everybody, thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. For everybody who's listening, keep on the lookout. There's lots of great announcements coming out about RISACon. The State of the Industry survey is still out there. I think we have over 400 responses. Yay, survey goers. We appreciate you. Please take the survey. We're going to release a beautiful report that will have lots of questions, common questions that stagers ask each other in all these groups that they use in order to make better decisions about their business, such as, their payroll expenses. What are they paying? What are job descriptions like? All that great information. So please take the survey if you have not already. I think there's 2 days left to take it. And everybody who takes the survey is going to get the report for free. And if you don't take the survey and you want it, you are going to have to pay $13 million for it. So we appreciate everybody on this another episode of Stager Talk. Join us in the future. And until we see each other again, happy staging, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Shell.
Thanks, Shell. Bye, all. Thanks for joining us.